All right, we should be live now. All
Alrighty.
right, so zero viewers right now, but to anybody in the future listening, welcome. This is my humble show where we talk about whatever people who come on want to talk about. But today is a little special because I actually have like a special guest who is a notorious, infamous terrorist, Thomas Zaugg. Who you actually have a really interesting story. The way that I found you was through that through the Justin Jordan Peterson group on Facebook, right? His mythopoetic party boat, which
Yeah.
has always been a very interesting group, rife with tons of drama. I remember Theron was in that group at one point, and like she got really pissed at everyone, which I think was kind of understandable. But then you were
Yeah.
always kind of stirring the pot in there, and I always thought it was very entertaining. Um,
Well, I mean, you got to stir the pot. That's how the conversation flows, you know? Like if you don't stir the pot, people are like constipated conversationally, and then
yeah,
society stagnates and nothing progresses.
well, and that's why I'm like very opposed to this prioritizing of optics, right, and everything like that. I get that people appeal to it on like practical grounds, but I I just don't accept it on principle, and I think that we need to be a lot more permissive. I think that people just need thicker skins in general, and like we need to have some space, even to say things that are stupid or hateful or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like an alien dealing with people who are so concerned with like always seeming like impeccably optically perfect.
Well, and I think that problem even transfers into political life too, you know? Like oftentimes people are building their political parties or their political movements or whatever, and they're always more concerned about the optics of how they believe the public is perceiving what the organization is instead of what the organization is actually doing, right? And so for me, I always find this to be like a huge problem because you have all of these people that think you're going to try and do something to help them with your political ideas, but then if they don't actually make sense and they don't actually amount to anything, then is that good? And contrast that to the political kind of culture that we have today where people talk very fast, very polished, but the shit that they're promising doesn't really add up or doesn't really materialize versus like a guy like me that maybe comes off like a bit of a wombat, but like what I'm talking about actually makes sense. It's just I talk about it in a way where like everyone can understand. Like the main kind of discriminating factor that I think prevents people from understanding me is they just like have some type of personal hatred or something, and that's like kind of 100% on them. So
Yeah, I guess it's part of the problem is optics are kind of the first thing you see by definition. And I think a lot of people they don't want to really dig deeper and see, is this actually like practical or paying off or is it actually having the impact?
mm,
Like for me, the longest time I had always kind of assumed, oh, the ACLU is cool. Like I get that they're kind of controversial at times, but if you're principled, you're gonna be controversial. But then of course, this Men's Day, they've upset me. They've triggered me. It's time to disavow them. Um,
oh,
but
what did the ACLU do?
well, okay, so they're tweeting on International Men's Day about how men can have periods and this whole thing about trans men, right?
Right.
And that pisses me off because men have this long laundry list of all these issues, right, that are completely ignored. And after years and years of MRAs pointing out, first of all, that we have a Men's Day. For the longest time, feminists would kind of mock people who say, "How come there's no Men's Day?" and say, "Haha, there is. You just don't know about it because we don't even celebrate it," right? Like as if that
Mm,
doesn't prove everyone's point. The
right.
UN made the same day International Toilet Day. Like they're
The
so but
fuck?
now the narrative is all of these feminists and SJWs they're trying to co-opt it. A couple of years ago, like they created like a conference to talk about men's issues, but of course it was like in this very very feminist way where it's about how can we change men, and how can we combat toxic masculinity and how can we empower men to stop hurting women and just all this just bullshit. And yeah, and I'm very fed up with it. But of course, it's such bullshit that the ACLU, does fuck all to help men, and then
No.
they're gonna come in there and try to co-opt International Men's Day, making it about trans issues. It's very stupid.
Well, I don't know. I have kind of a weird problem with this whole, like, I just, like, you can be whoever you want to be. You can express however you want to express, but like part of being a man is this like fraternal element of things, you know? And yeah, I sometimes I can't tell if I'm like a top lobster or like a virgin, you know? No, I'm somewhere on the spectrum between like a virgin and a Chad, and and it's like your interactions with men, they're just different than they are with women. And then I wonder sometimes, like with all of this coming in, it's like these people like just kind of expect to just like come in at like where do they think they're coming in on the dominance hierarchy, you know, like where were they getting stuffed into lockers in the ninth grade, and like what about like, you know, those like instances that like shape you, you know? And the thing is they didn't have them, and that's
Well, and that's becoming the norm. I mean, for me, like I remember, I had moved to China like some years ago, and the other expats there, it was mostly all straight men. So we're all going to the
mm,
bar and all hanging out, and like it was immediately obvious to me, like wow, like the way that they socialize, it's totally different from how like things were, and I'm hanging out with my friends who were girls and gay men and stuff, right? Like it's just a totally different dynamic in a different world. And to me, I'm not really exposed to that until like adulthood. But that's kind of normal at this point because there's just such an absence of male influence in people's lives, especially when you're young.
yeah, well, yeah, with the family being so easily broken up these days, I don't think too many people are growing up in homes with two parents in them. And so that's putting, I think, kids at a disadvantage, and I think that that's also putting society at a disadvantage because, you know, like society is the relationship between a man and a woman, um, and the feminine aspect is like so empowered in the Western world that it's out of touch and out of balance with the masculine aspect, and you know, like the feminine aspect of things, I think, is a little more disconnected from the consequences of stupid decisions. Whereas I think the masculine kind of energy of whatever is something that does connect action to consequence and has a little bit better intuition in certain situations. You know, I think often how it's kind of portrayed in media that like women are the ones with intuition and all, you know, I don't I don't jive with that, you know. I think it's a little more complicated.
Yeah, yeah, and I generally agree with all of that. I think that what people do is it's like so immediately obvious that men are the ones who tend to be building everything and making everything work. So then they make up a lot of this like BS kind of mysticism because you can't disprove it, right? You can't disprove that, white chicks and drinking crystal water and feeling vibrations in the universe and that they're not tapping into some transcendental sacred mother Gaia pagan bullcrap, right? We can't really disprove that, and I think that's part of what is like inspiring this movement of like feminist witches and everything. It's kind of like a like it's kind of based on like they know that they're not the ones building things, so they kind of have to make up like a fairy tale. But so I wanted
A feel good
to
fairy
kind
tale.
of on the earlier end of this, I guess talk a little bit about the recent happenings, but also about kind of just more broadly, the things that you've been talking about. Because like one thing I remember you had said is like people who go through like a mental health system, it's like we should value that input because you have firsthand knowledge of it. but then we don't because
Yeah.
we say, oh well, you're a crazy person, so why would we listen to you? And I think that's such bullshit, especially when you take a step back and consider, the mental health field doesn't really have a great track record. Like I think what was it? They had Zimbardo with his stupid prison experiments, and it's like it can't be replicated, and it was complete garbage, and he was exposed as a fraud, and he's like the top pinnacle, like tier of like a lot of these soft sciences and things, and we have this epidemic of like children being drugged and everything, and like it's just very obvious that a lot of this stuff doesn't really work. Even the softer things like psychotherapy, talking to a shrink, um, it seems like it's very questionable, its efficacy. I guess maybe it's the best we have, but I don't know
I don't
how
know.
much of a how much of
Like
an effect
I
that
used
is.
to see a shrink for about 3 years, and we fought a lot, but the sex was pretty good, and I could I could just never really reconcile that she knew what the hell she was talking about. Like what I could see a lot of the time was it was just like a snobby kind of just presupposed worldview disconnected from like the realities of shit like the poverty cycle, right? And so it's like she's working in this capacity where she's trying to counsel people and stuff. She wasn't counseling me; she was dating me, but you know,
Oh, and I'm glad you
but she
clarified that
doesn't
because you made it
understand.
sound like like it
Hey,
was the.
hey, hi, I'm here. I'm very confused. You were joking about a lot of that. I'm
Yeah.
imagining. Okay.
Well, I mean, not. I'm only half joking. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay. Well, yeah. What are we talking about in general?
Yeah, so Prince, welcome to the stream.
Hi.
So this is Thomas Zaugg. We've actually been Facebook friends for you know
few years now, I'd say,
few
right?
years, yeah, actually. And you have just like this long ongoing battle with the Canadian mental health system.
Yeah.
But recently the development was I don't
Oh,
know.
I
I don't know
kicked it
how
up a
much
notch.
of it you want to say because I don't want to like mess with
Oh
because I
no,
know
no,
you have
no,
like an
no, no! Don't.
ongoing legal issue. So anything you don't want to say or admit to or whatever.
Well, no, no, no. I've already fully admitted to all of this, so it's.
So we're talking about what you do in general. Is that the general topic of conversation?
In
I
general
guess
and in
so.
particular, yeah.
Wait,
Yeah.
wait, what? What did you just say? You guys were both talking.
I mean, I guess so. I mean, I'm trying to share, I guess, a little bit of the my struggle that I've been through,
Okay.
and try and wake people up to I think a lot of the lies of our society and how those lies are kind of protected and enforced and kind of people that see the lies and how they're dealt with, because
Uh,
that's how I interpret the whole psychiatric system.
okay. And so your ongoing battle is is it personal? Is it a more general thing?
Well, it's a more general thing because like I've like last year or earlier this year I tried arguing a constitutional challenge, challenging the constitutional efficacy of the mental health treatment laws that they have here because they have a set of laws where if they feel like you're not taking care of yourself they can just like come and detain you and lock you up,
Oh,
um, which is kind of and in my view of things, I feel like if people feel like my behavior is like crossing the threshold of criminal activity, or they feel like I'm a danger to society or something, well, they should probably charge me with a crime, so then I have the ability to try and defend my actions in court, right?
hmm.
Um, but that's not kind of what's been going on with me for the last 10 years. I've been outspoken about um, things that I thought could be changed in Canada, like the monetary system.
Okay.
Uh, And as a result of speaking out about these topics at protests and online, what happens is the police, they come and they detain me from my place, and then they bring me to psychiatric facilities where they
Oh, okay.
yeah, and they drug me up until I stop sharing my opinion, essentially.
Oh, okay. Sorry to force a conversation that probably happened. But now I think I kind of get it. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, we actually hadn't gotten quite into that yet. But so what I wanted to talk about is, and I'm sure it'll kind of segue back into that, is just this kind of recent
Yeah.
controversy on Remembrance Day. So I had this article here from Narcity. Is that
Oh
supposed to be
boy.
like narcissism but city? Narcity?
Right. I
Uh,
wonder, were they good to
uh,
me or bad to me? We'll see.
I don't know. I just like I hate this already. so, so I read this one and it just struck me. We talked a little bit about this. I think it's just so like gossipy and passive aggressive, and I just like hate this. So it's like Karen Duradia, whatever. The man who allegedly vandalized the Toronto Cenotaph says he did it for Don Cherry. So vandalizing a Remembrance Day memorial is something most people would not consider doing, and now the person arrested for allegedly spray painting the cenotaph on November 12th appears to have spoken. Toronto police have arrested 33-year-old Thomas Christian Zaugg for mischief, and it seems the firing of Don Cherry had something to do with it. Toronto police issued an update on Friday, November 15th, announcing that Zaugg is now facing two mischief-related charges. Ye broke faith, and with us were the words spray painted on the cenotaph. Yeah, which like obviously that's supposed to be ye broke faith with us, right? That's one statement.
It's
Yeah.
supposed to be
Yeah.
what? Faith?
Ye broke faith with us.
Oh, okay.
Now,
It's
anyway, when you
it's a
say
line
that,
from
you're saying it's the government broke faith with the Canadian people, including the soldiers, right? Including these veterans.
correct.
Mm-hmm. Let's
Yeah.
see. Then it's a pretty short article. We'll just cruise through it.
Oh my God! You know what I was thinking that you were talking about? I was thinking that you were talking about Transgender Day of Remembrance, but I was like, wait, but isn't that today?
Oh my god.
But it is.
Yeah, I have a lot of LGBT friends, so all these people are posting about it, and of course, they're not actually really saying anything. They're just like, "Oh my God, virtue, virtue," you
Well,
know.
and actually, Prince, one thing we could talk about later is the Lady Maga drama that's been going down.
Oh,
And
I
Lady
don't even
Maga
know
is
about.
someone Black Knight Fool pointed out they'd be a good person to have on Gaytriarchy, and I didn't think of that. Which
Okay,
is in hindsight is like super obvious. I'm
huh.
sure they'd be interested, but
Okay, wait,
hopefully.
but I guess we didn't finish actually talking about what you brought up. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, we got okay. So it says now it's been discovered that a man with the same name wrote a pretty long Facebook post a couple of days ago. The post apparently admits that he, ostensibly Zog, vandalized the cenotaph out of some kind of revenge for Cherry's dismissal. It should be noted it has not been publicly confirmed whether the two Thomas Zoggs are indeed the same man. The Facebook post reads, "What Don Cherry said was not racist, hateful, or directed at immigrants. We have gotten to a strange place in our society when a beloved sports broadcaster, known for making fiery yet thoughtful rants, gets fired for encouraging the people in the GTA to celebrate and participate by reverencing a national day of remembrance of our fallen, and continuing the tradition of buying and wearing a poppy." The post continues, "This cancel
A
culture has gotten
poppy?
out of hand,
Yeah.
and I fear it is the benchhead for a cultural shift into an authoritarian communist state. This is not the future the men who fought and died in the battles inscribed on that monument died for." I suppose we should have had you read that part, right? Because it's yours.
I mean, it
But
doesn't matter,
I mean,
right?
I kind of like I completely agree with generally what you're all about. I think everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. I can imagine a lot of people have trouble supporting the act. You know, um, because I get that a lot of people say, well, why drag the veterans into it, right? They could say, I agree with everything you're saying, but why do it in this way? And I imagine that your counter is that it's raising a lot of awareness. It's getting a lot of people to think about these things.
Yeah, I would say that, and I think Like I was talking to a veteran last night on a podcast. I don't even remember which one, to be honest. But but he, when we were talking about this, he said that initially he thought it was a veteran that had done it. And I don't know if you guys are aware, but in Canada, like the veterans are kind of getting hosed on a lot of their benefits. There's YouTube clips that you can see of guys kind of confronting the prime minister at town hall meetings. And there's the one where Justin Trudeau kind of responds to a veteran in Edmonton, I believe, and he tells the veteran that the vets are asking for more than we can give.
Yeah, I remember that one. I think that was last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What was written? Wasn't something? Did I miss this? I thought I heard that something was written on the memorial thing.
Yeah.
Ye broke faith with us.
Yeah.
Oh, that was what was written. Sorry, God, I'm missing everything. Okay.
Yeah. And so ye broke faith with us is a reference to In Flanders Fields by John McCrae, and I personally view that poem as a covenant that the Canadian people makes with its military. And in other parts of Canada, there's a whole heck of a lot of respect for the people that serve. And in the GTA, there is not. And there's not a lot of people that are wearing the poppies and stuff. And so when Don Cherry is trying to talk about that, and you get this kind of group of people, the hyper offended kind of whatevers that jump out at anybody that says, hey, relax, that's why I view this as like the beachhead for a communist takeover here. And then, when I was on that podcast with the vets last night, they gave me a whole bunch of other information, and it's just I'm at a point where I feel like very much like we're on the precipice of something terrible, and I don't know if there's anything we can do to stop it.
Yeah,
Well,
I think it all makes a lot of sense. And so the Don Cherry thing, you describe what he said as like not being directed at immigrants and not being hateful or anything, and I think that's actually the consensus, right? Like it was considered controversial, but like it was clear cut, obvious he wasn't referring to that. It was because he used the phrase "you people."
Yeah, he said, "You people, you come here or whatever it is, and it's just one of those things where I feel like." You have this group of people that are just going to deliberately misinterpret like what somebody's saying, and like deliberately hold them to like some kind of unrealistic standard that goes beyond how we normally think in the English language. Because English is like a smorgasbord of a bunch of different words. And it's like I think. Because people spend so much time on computers, a lot of them have forgotten what it is to like try and formulate an original thought.
Yeah, it's because we're always copying things, we're always looking at things, but also even when we're speaking, we're constantly looking at it in text and stopping and maybe editing, and we can go back and we can edit, right? So I think when you're in any kind of medium where you're just talking, it comes out. It's not very easy to go back and edit things like that. And I think, there's definitely not enough space to just like talk naturally and to say things. Even though this idea that things come out wrong, right, is like a totally like common concept that everybody understands. So I think you're right that it's disingenuous. They're looking for the outrage, and I think that's probably why we've seen this standard just constantly tighten. They don't have an end game, and they don't even have, I think, a conception of what their ideal is. I think they're just going to continue on in this path until people get fed up with it. So I guess maybe
and I think they're just going to live in this like. They're going to live in this kind of like decadent mindset where it's like, this week they're mad at this thing, and then next week it'll be something else, and it'll go on like that for probably a decade or so, and it's gonna be terrible. It's gonna be absolutely terrible. I don't like it.
I don't like it.
I don't, and I'm just at this weird place in my thinking and things where it's like I've just come to just be so damn black pilled. You know what I mean? Where I'm just so, I don't want to be black pilled, because I know that even though the media is not giving me a fair shake right now, that there's a lot of people in Canada that really care. That they're just really spread out, and I don't know, like, yeah.
Well, yeah, it seems like that is kind of often the case, and that's I think why the internet's been the best weapon of people who are pro liberty, is because otherwise there's no way to unite all these disparate people. Oh, you also have this problem where if you're more kind of individualistic or minded towards liberty, it's a lot harder to organize you because just because of the kind of people involved. So there's really a lot that's already stacked kind of against this all not working. I've become a little bit more sympathetic towards the accelerationist side lately. Like, I don't think I'd be supporting Donald Trump in 2020, just looking at the way he's recklessly spent. That's kind of the one issue that I really cared about and really hoped that having an outsider as president would have made a difference, but it seems like our best takeaway from Donald Trump's presidency is like his Twitter is super funny and it causes a lot of like funny drama. Like, he's an entertaining president and like probably the best, one of the best. I think besides like Coolidge or whatever. Like, there's not a lot of good presidents to pick from, but I think that there are also like I think we're also primed to look for political solutions because that's just what's always dominant, right? And like we're taught like, oh, if you want to change something, go protest, go vote, and we don't, I don't think, challenge enough whether or not those are effective and whether or not there's better things we can do. And I think like agorism is a word that everybody should learn and should think about in their own life.
What is it? I don't know what that is.
Agorism, it's when you deprive the state of its resources by basically checking out of the system. It's kind of like going off the grid, or you just find ways to support yourself that don't also support the system.
Oh, that's hard.
I mean,
that's hard. Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's easy and it's hard, right? It's hard to do it absolutely, but you can find small ways to do it also. And I say more is more, and every little bit counts.
Okay. I mean, I like the idea of escaping and like getting off the grid and just like living my own life, but I feel like they would just take it away. I'd set it up and they take it away because they monitor all the land out here with like helicopters, airplanes. They do like photographic surveillance. So if you don't have a permit for a spot and you're building up on it, then it's going to be an issue. They'll come kick you out.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things with just the way that property laws are set up. I know it's the case in the U.S.
Yeah.
The government can basically just like take your land for any reason. Like you really don't own anything, and that's why when people say, "Oh, well, the right to property comes from government," I get very angry at them. I think it's such a horrible, it's just like the epitome of thinking like a slave. I just find it so groveling and undignified to ask for to beg for scraps of your natural rights from a government.
But it is kind of tricky too, because there's actually a woodland hermit who's gained some notoriety in Switzerland. They kept arresting him from being off the system, like, hey, you have to pay your taxes. And he's like, I don't make any money, how should I pay taxes? And I think last year they stopped re-arresting him. They just let him be his woodland hermit ways. But took him like 10 years to get to that stage.
Yeah, he just like scrawls on a piece of tree bark like, I didn't make any money, 0, whatever percent of 0 is 0,
So we just have
You
to
want
do
part
it,
of my squirrel?
Yeah,
So
right,
we just have
here's
to-
part of my squirrel I ate.
So we just have to do it a whole bunch of times. Be persistent.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's. I guess there's two perspectives, right? Can things kind of reform and improve themselves over time to such a point that things are reasonable? Or do things need to get so horrible that everything collapses and then in that vacuum we remember some of these principles and enshrine them quickly enough and effectively enough? And, who knows? Because who knows when or where all of this is happening. It's kind
The
of
thing that
hard.
I've always thought is, oh, what? No. The thing I always thought was dangerous about this like accelerationist idea is nuclear power plants. Like what happens when all this shit falls apart and then the nuclear power plants start to just like fully decay and melt down. It's
I don't
not
know. I think they'll be fine. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, as long as the last guy who leaves the plant turns it off, I guess.
Yeah, just
Like,
last guy that leaves turns
don't
it
leave
off
the
and
iron
we're
on,
good.
You're encouraging me to stay lazy and complacent.
Maybe. I mean, accelerationism doesn't have to be lazy, but I guess it allows for that, right? If we're going to go through the decadent phase of Rome before the collapse, I guess might as well take a little decadence with you on the way out.
Yeah. No, I had something depressing to say, and now I actually forget it.
Oh, that's good news. I mean, it probably won't happen.
Yeah, that
It
means
doesn't
it went away.
necessarily-
That means we cured it.
Doesn't necessarily mean that we're at the fall of Rome just yet. Like it could be a revival. You guys ever heard of Ulpian?
Ulpian?
Yeah,
I have not. How do you spell that?
Lpian.
O
U.
Oh, I missed the first
LPIN.
letter.
U. Okay.
Ulpian.
Open.
Oh, this Roman jurist.
Yes.
Prominent Roman jurist born in Tyre, he was considered one of the great legal authorities of his time and was one of the 5 jurists upon whom decisions were to be based according to the law of citations of Valentinian III.
So a neat thing about that is basically in all the law had kind of become a little bit fucked up, and the Ulpian put out a lot of philosophies of law that were kind of based off of objective reality with some type of deity. The cosmopolis, I think, was the spiritual city that they kind of imagined themselves going in. But the point is like, everything doesn't have to go to shit. Like like in my country, Canada, like our constitution, it's founded on the supremacy of God, right? Indicates in order to sustain the law, you have to have the supremacy of God. And I do in like Canadian legal practice is the practice is generally doing everything again to push the deity concept and God out of law, and it's having some serious impacts on the society that are doing a lot to harm people, because it's like we now have kind of the mentality of everybody else, me first, right? And that's what spurs on the collapse of the society, is the breaking down of reciprocity. And the thing is that the Canadian way only been foundationally based upon reciprocity, like taking care of each other in the wintertime and like helping neighbors with food and milk. Like this is like what the Canadian thing is. And we've gotten to a point where you've got these people that have kind of put themselves in power in the bureaucracies of the state. They no longer care what the function of the role is supposed to fill. They just want to get their paycheck, go home. Right? So it's like it leaves people in this awkward position where you have this like ever expanding, ballooning bureaucracy and this citizenship of taxpayers that is smaller and smaller every year to support it.
Yeah, I
Right? We're
I
not just
agree
mass
with
supporting people
with
because
the
then it's going to
problems.
prop up their bank.
Yeah, I'm just so I guess the way I see it is like reciprocity is important. The problem is that I think when you have a lot of government meddling, it basically it creates like fake versions of it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the problem is we don't really distinguish between that. And what ends up happening is wherever you have like a government service, it's going to start to erode what would be like an organic kind of natural social fabric. And I think basically not enough
Yeah.
people, I guess, are ready or willing to think of the idea of having laws without necessarily having a government. I do agree. It seems like the only way to have a government is to essentially make it like a theocracy. Um, I maintain that statism, right, the belief that having a government is necessary, is fundamentally a religious belief. And I think most of what is called religion is actually more cosmetic, kind of something people put on top of it. Because you notice people's religious beliefs always bend to and are always shaped by their more fundamental political beliefs, which
Yeah.
I think that's something, I think obviously not a lot of people like me saying that because it's a little bit dismissive.
One quick thing. I think we got some comments.
Yeah, Fakeologist is in our chat here and asked Thomas, any comments on Babcock?
What, hockey? Leaving the Leafs?
Is that what it is? Is it a hockey
I mean-
thing? I'm not sure. I don't watch sports.
Yeah, Mike Babcock. He just got fired from the Leafs today. I haven't really read too much into any of the coverage on it. Not really a big hockey fan, though. I'm more of a baseball guy, sure. But yeah, I think I think Toronto hockey has taken some serious hits in this last week. Don Cherry's gone, and then coach is gone from the team. So will that serve the team? Hurt the team? Only time tells.
But now I'm starting to think you're being persecuted based on your public statements about not liking hockey that much. That's very un-Canadian of you.
Yeah, is that what it's all about? I mean, if Canada loses its hockey, what more clear signal of the end do we need?
Well, that was like, yeah, because it's big cultural, right? And I mean, for me, I've always been a bit of an outsider in Canada anyway, right? Like Mormon growing up in Canada, it's just it doesn't fit necessarily. Like it's very like outspoken about its belief in divinity, right? But in Canadian society, that's not really welcome. It's not really. At least in the GTA, it's kind of it gets shunned a little bit, and the thing is that it's not even. It's just, I think there's certain scenarios where people just kind of take shit out of hand. I don't know what happens, but I get fucked with, and then I find myself locked up because I was making some jokes about some stuff, and I get my head spun about that because I'm just like, well, I was just kidding around about this shit, and now I'm here for what? Why? What did I break? And that's the whole thing. Is there's like a lot of messed up people in Canada and the GTA that are like been through the mental health system, the mental health system, does not help them get better at all, and actually makes them like a million times worse. And then they're on the other side of it, frustrated and pissed off, trying to be like, well, how the fuck do I fix my life? Like, where the fuck do I get this shit sorted out now? And I don't know if it's like that in other countries or not, but what I find messed up is, you sit down with one of these shrinks, and they just they're just there with like a pen and paper, and it's like you're being interrogated, and they don't care.
Yeah, I think
Or
it's
anything
probably
like
a problem we
that. They just
see among all of the westernized countries because they have a lot of these same systems. And I do think a huge root of it is in, the breakdown of the family, which was facilitated by the welfare state. And if we got rid of that, we would have kind of more social and organic, more natural ways well, I guess kind of raising people in environments where I think we'd be there'd be less of it, right? But then also where there are
yeah
problems, we'd have much better, more compassionate ways of dealing with these kinds of problems. But also some
right
acceptance too, like I feel like in the past, like people could just be weird and like that was okay. Like you were allowed to be weird, but
mm,
now it's like the moment, it's like degrees of separation to calling everyone a terrorist, right? They're like, oh, here's
yeah.
someone who can't get a girlfriend. Oh, he's an incel. Oh, incels are terrorists, right? It's like so easy. Like,
Well, yeah, and that's the main reason why women shouldn't have power. Uh, this is the gossip, is what I'm saying. We have people doing. I'm being facetious when I say women shouldn't have power. By the way, but it's a fair critique about like gossip and people not really like men. I don't feel straight men, anyways, don't really gossip that much about other dudes and their shit. Whereas women gossip about people all of the time, and then that's just how a lot of stuff gets spread and circulated throughout society. It's just like a bunch of ladies gossiping about shit, and half the time, this like be like the wrong message is getting conveyed, and it doesn't line up with the reality at all.
well, and that's the thing is, right? They always say sunlight is the best disinfectant, and I feel like the more generally masculine ways of dealing with a lot of interpersonal conflicts is to, either have a fight about it or tell someone directly what your problem is, right? Or like, like just state it. Whereas this kind of very feminine, gossipy sort of a thing, it drives things underground and lets it fester and lets it get exaggerated and it passes through different stories and it warps and it contorts and becomes like this whole different monster, you know. Whereas I think there's some
Yeah,
virtue, like a lot of people mention, dueling. It kind of gets a bad rep, but it's actually kind of unfair. Like there was actually a very civil and dignified aspect to having a duel. And they usually weren't lethal. It was just the fact that
yeah,
you were willing to, you know, basically face the potential of death or really grievous injury, and come out of it was sort of like a way of kind of bearing the hatchet and moving on.
yeah. And I also think that it was like a refining tool for men, because it was like as men we would keep each other in check when it's like, okay, that behavior.
Mm. Dude, you cut out there, Thomas.
Yeah, it might be a problem with my connection because I think mine's the one hosting it, and I don't know, having a little bit of trouble with some buffering. He's totally frozen on my end, so I wonder if he's gonna drop. He'll probably come back in a little bit.
Ah, that sucks.
Prince, are you still there? He might be listening, but slightly away from the keyboard. And I wonder if like this silly background I have on the stream of this dude twirling his baton around, I wonder if that is more taxing. I don't know how any of this stuff works. It's just like magic. But
It's actually some traffic when I look at my connection from having that open. Guess maybe go for a still image, but that's not certainly not the key issue with Thomas's connection to you.
no, we got a weeb in the chat telling us that he can still hear all of us. So it looks like it's Thomas who maybe his connection's disrupted, but that's okay. And we'll hang out here, and hopefully he'll be able to drop back in. But I guess basically that's the message.
Write him a
is
message.
Kids, don't talk to a shrink. Stop taking your drugs, and I don't know. Do we have that big of a problem with vandalism? I guess we don't. I mean, I guess maybe the veterans got a little pissed. I can kind of sympathize with that, but you know, they'll power wash it. It'll be fine, and maybe we'll have gained something very valuable from it. I guess maybe that's an ends justify the means kind of thing. I remember me and Thomas actually did have like a Facebook debate about, I forgot what it was. He had posted something and it was like not accurate, and I was telling him this isn't true, and he said, I'm trying to make Justin Trudeau not get reelected, and I was like, that's ridiculous. He's obviously not. So I guess I was ultimately wrong. I can eat my own shit on that, but
Yeah, I was surprised by that fact as well. Like, this guy somehow gets a pass on everything.
Who does?
Trudeau.
Oh, Trudeau. Yeah, and it's... Well, actually, Molyneux made a really, really good video about Trudeau in the wake of the blackface incident. That was actually a little bit sympathetic toward Trudeau. That, you know, people who are born in that kind of a situation, because they have such immediate access to all of this power and prestige, nobody ever calls them out because they're always trying to get at that influence. So he's never had the benefit of people telling him, like, hey, don't do this shitty thing or whatever. Not to imply that there's anything wrong with blackface. You can quote me forever. There is absolutely nothing wrong with blackface. Like, it's a completely fake controversy. Anybody who says they're offended by blackface is a liar, and I stand by that.
Yeah, but the other point is quite poignant. Like, I don't think anybody ever said no to Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, exactly.
The
Because they
kind
saw
of shit
an
doesn't
opportunity.
happen.
He always comes with his opportunity, so he never got to be treated like a person, and that's really, really sad.
Yeah, it's sad for him. Like, I don't think he realizes that, but it's also sad for the country he's running. If this kind of person should not be in power. Like, people always argue about Trump should not be president of the United States, and I can see many points why that is true. If you want to go by that route, you gotta say Justin Trudeau is by no means supposed to be Prime Minister of Canada. It's insane.
Yeah, and that's I know I rant about this all the time, but just the fact that people complain about, oh, they're not presidential, they're not enough like a politician, and then at the same time they'll totally agree, oh, politicians are just a bunch of liars, and I wish they could just tell me the truth, right? And it's just such annoying hypocrisy. My biggest issue with Trump is he's too presidential. Oh, hey, you're back. Yeah, looks like you were disconnected for a little while there.
Yeah, I was like, what the heck happened? Bloody cyber wars. You gotta love them.
They're trying to silence you, I think.
They always are, man. They always
Always.
are. I don't know. I would love if that was like a paranoid delusion. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I would really love if that was a paranoid delusion.
Just because you're paranoid, don't mean they're not after you, man.
Yeah, man. So are you in Switzerland?
And
Yeah, born and raised.
I heard that my last name was very popular in Switzerland, like Smith.
Oh, well, I've come across nobody personally, but there's public figures that are called Zaugg, so yeah, it's not uncommon.
Yeah. Here I feel like an alien.
the name does sound a little bit alien. Yeah, it sounds
Prob-
too. You might not get into the ethno state when it happens. Let's say Zaugg sounds like you're in whiteface or something.
I am. I'll just have you all know I'm originally Japanese.
Was that Japanese? That sounded more southern.
I know.
Now that you mention it, I can see it totally.
Slanty. Yeah.
There was something I wanted to bring up, but I completely just forgot.
There was something I wanted to bring up that I remember. It's a bit tangential right now, but you talked about this me first culture that's spreading not just in Canada but in North and West, like telling people to care about themselves first and foremost, which in one part I feel like that's more agreeable to women than it is to men, because many men want to take responsibility for others and cooperate, but then I remembered the problem that a lot of the developing world has. Like, you have 7 siblings and you actually get to make some money, and your whole family expects you to take care of every one of your relatives, which kind of destroys any opportunity for growth.
Yeah, but at the same time, there is a fact that men should occasionally prioritize themselves a little bit more than they do.
Yeah, there needs to be a
the
balancing
extremes.
factor, right? Like, we can't just throw away selfishness. And I know I'm like a broken record, but I think that the libertarian standard really elegantly solves this problem. If we stop trying to control it arbitrarily, then it naturally sorts itself out. We can keep our freedom to choose the cheeseburger while rejecting, the selfishness that makes people use the government to give themselves gibs and to rob other people.
Yeah, I think the actual solution would be a balance between the two extremes. Like, it doesn't both are insane.
Yeah, but I
only
definitely
caring about yourself and being responsible for your whole family. Both are insane, fundamentally.
Yeah. I definitely see what you're saying about women sort of maybe like already doing that a little bit too much in many instances. So
Yeah. Well, this is like what's going on, and it's like you can't have. I think that it's better for men to be selfless, and I think that it's better for men to be selfless and to make those types of sacrifices, because I think that's the only thing that ever changes the world. And it's just a question of whether or not we do these things because we get the benefit of them, or if we do these things because they're the right thing to do, and that this is what the authoritas that we've been endowed with to go and actually make these positive things happen in the world.
Yeah, I agree, and I do definitely think that there's so many instances where you are getting at least something out of it. Because, like, I think about the things that I do that are positive, and I have my YouTube channel. Haven't been making that many videos recently, but I would say in a lot of ways it's mostly I'm trying to benefit others. Like, I'm trying to give a voice to things that are not really talked about. And that's kind of what I generally do. I don't really talk. I talk about myself, certainly. But it's like I'm trying to give a voice to, men's rights, and specifically gay men's issues that are not being talked about at all. And that's kind of why I started my channel. But at the same time, it's not like I'm not getting something personally from it at all. And
Right.
a lot of the things that I've done have been like that, so it's like it's kind of a cool a mix when those things happen, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, it would be a lie to say that I'm not getting a personal benefit from it, but I'm doing both. And that's in some ways there's a certain greatness about it, because it keeps you going and it keeps you doing more and more of that thing. And so, but I mean, yeah, if you're actually doing something that's largely you could call altruistic, but like Whether or not anything's truly altruistic is very debatable. But if it's mostly helping other people, that's maybe the ideal.
Yeah, I mean, like for me, it's like it is kind of both selfish and altruistic because like I'm trying to get all of these mental health laws repealed because they're harming a bunch of people that aren't me, but they're
Yeah.
also harming me, right?
Yeah, and that in a lot of ways is maybe the biggest motive, even though you're not helping you as much as other people.
Yeah, and it's like the big thing that I try and do is like shift the Overton window, you know, because in my view of things, the Overton window is very arbitrary, right? And this is where I perceive psychiatry coming in because it is what kind of clips off any roots that are coming outside of the window that are too far developed, right? And so that's why I fight hard against this psychiatry shit because I really don't think and I know it probably doesn't make sense to very many other people, but I don't think that our society can progress any further with the practice of psychiatry in it because what these people are doing is they're censoring unique and brilliantly creative ideas that are maybe expressed in a different format, but these people that have these ideas are just like you and I, and they when they're put through this system, it destroys them spiritually and physically and emotionally, and then what can we expect as society to gain from these people? You know, like I meet people in mental institutions, and like the dumbest person probably has like a 115 IQ. You know, like you can't get in there for being stupid. And it, of course, there are some exceptions and different people and whatnot, but a lot of the times, like people that I've seen in these places are people that tried to do the morally correct thing in the presence of some very immoral people, and they fought for the morally correct thing, and then because you can't go to jail for doing the morally correct thing, you can just be called crazy for it. You get sequestered away from society and tortured outside of law or reason or justification or any of that shit.
So it's like an alternative version of law for when people in power aren't getting what they want. They can just kind of use this other, basically a cheat code, right, to get around having to deal with people having these pesky little rights.
Yeah.
Would you say though?
Go
just
on.
real. This is quick. Would you say though that there is some very intelligent people who also have like legit mental issues?
The thing is like how much of the mental issue is being caused by the drugs and how much of it is being caused by like the fact that their uncle molested them when they were a kid. Like there's because the one thing is like the real psychological trauma, right? And the reason for the drugs and all that other stuff. But then the drugs create a whole different set of problems that don't do anything to address this other thing, right? So how do you reconcile?
Thing. Like someone could do a whole fucking bunch of acid or something and end up with like schizophrenia, you know? So.
Supposedly, but it's like so. Like with me, like when I did acid, right? I was an atheist at the time. I had grown up in the LDS faith, and as you know, when you do acid, like childhood has a weird way of coming back, and I just saw this like war between good and evil, and it's like a pattern that I see in everything. And the thing is like is that actually there, or am I crazy? And like for me, I feel like it's normal to distinguish between good and evil, and to see like the difference between those two things, and being able to recognize when people are on a spectrum, and because it is a spectrum between these things. But it's like that's like the equivalent of having your spiritual eyes open, right? And isn't this society supposed to give people the freedom to their religion? And so if my religion is me being able to see good from evil in a world that believes it's beyond good and evil, then that creates a whole bunch of uncomfortable situations for other people. So it's just better for me to get locked up in a loony bin, so they can live in this world the way they like it.
Yeah, that's something that I've like I'm a bit of a black sheep too, because I do also insist, yes, good and evil are real things, but it is a very, very unfashionable stance. And I come from the more atheist and skeptic sort of camp, like especially among them, right? Because they are, I think, justly criticized for often dismissing, the idea of good and evil. But I did want to ask you more about Mormonism, actually. So you're still Mormon, right?
I was just going to say though, he was going to talk.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that though, because I wanted.
Okay, sorry. I was just making sure.
Whom?
Right.
I wanted to bring up an example case of abusive mental institutions. If that's all right.
Yeah, go for it.
There was this dude in Germany, I keep forgetting his name. He was a mechanic. He was married to a banker, and they used the same fax machine because he also had a business.
Right.
And his girlfriend helped rich people stash their money in Switzerland.
Classic.
And he had a huge moral problem with that. And he addressed it to her. And because one of her clients was a psychiatrist, she preemptively had this psychiatrist create like, oh, I talked to this guy, he beat his wife and he's mentally unstable, just in case he would try to go to her bank or to court, which he did.
Right.
So then they used that to lock him up. And he was so naive that he thought, hey, I am right. I have the facts right here. But what he didn't account for was that the judge who would be in the trial was also a client of his wife. And long story short, he was locked up for 15 years in mental institutions because every psychiatrist who reevaluated him just looked at the first evaluation and said, oh, I can't go against this guy. He's a fellow doctor, would be betraying, like one crow doesn't pick out the eye of another crow. And that was when that story, when he was released, when the story broke, it was like, whoa, this dude just had a moral compass, and he tried to apply it in the wrong place. Like that was really devastating.
That is some fucked up luck, too. That
but what I want you to get is that's a common story with a lot of people. Like one of my friends that I met in CAMH, she was a lawyer that had just finished her articling, or no, she wasn't a lawyer yet, but she was doing her articling at this firm, and she caught the firm doing some improprieties, and she raised some questions about it. And instead of giving her straight answers, which is naive on her part to think that they would, right? They had her locked up in a loony bin because she had an eating disorder when she was 15, and they were able to find that out. And so they were like, well, that's grounds to have her committed again because she's had a previous mental disorder, because that's how the laws are written up here.
Fuck.
There's a fucking another guy that was a defense lawyer, and he was speaking out against the cops, and he got brought in. It's not just me that they're doing this shit to. It's just the only difference is I'm not ashamed to talk about them doing it to me. And I don't buy into the belief that when they do it to me, it's somehow for my own goddamn good. You know, like every time that I've gone in to a psychiatric facility, I've come out worse. And it's like at 33 years old, it's really fucking like it's really frustrating to know that like I'm operating at a much diminished capacity of what I could be if they didn't do this to me so many times. Like my brain has been damaged by these drugs, and no, nothing in the world will undo that damage. Nothing will make it so that like I can be somebody that speaks at the normal pace and diction of everyone else, because like I just have to talk slower because that's how all of my shit got fucked up, and that's, you know, that's how I got to exist now, and it sucks.
Even though you're not on the drugs.
Yeah.
Wow.
Permanent damage.
Yeah.
So I think that's what Terry Gilliam meant in 12 Monkeys when he had Brad Pitt's character asked Bruce Willis, who was drugged out of man, "What do you on? Haldol? Know your drugs, know your dosage. It's elementary."
Yeah. Well, and Haldol is one of those drugs that causes brain shrinkage. You know, and it's the same drug that they inject you with when they bring you in. So it's like, you know, in my career of being an activist and trying to challenge this bullshit laws, I've been detained 13 different times, and so think about that. Every single time that they bring me in, I'm getting beaten up, tied up into this bed, and then injected with like a fucking serious dose of Haldol. Like sometimes they use 2 or 3 needles too. And like I don't know if it's only just Haldol or like if they're fucking around with other drugs or what the fuck, right? I don't. But it's, and there's nobody checking out on it, right? There's nobody that they're accountable to. There's nowhere that I can go to file a complaint. It's right. It's just shut up and take it. And I just, yeah.
Why do they give you more sometimes? Do you have any idea?
Well, I mean, like, I remember, I don't know why. Like, I remember once I was in Edmonton, and like my girl had just like aborted our kid and everything, and I was feeling pretty sad about that. And they took me in, and like I was locked in solitary confinement, and they just, like, I was asleep on the floor in the room, and they came in and they woke me up, and they like injected me with this shit, and it hurt, right? And I was like, ow, ow. And they like kept going, you know, like they 1, 2, and 3 different needles. And then you just like lay on the floor all like totally fucked up, and it's not like fun, you know. It's really, it's just hell.
What does the drug do?
It makes you feel like you're being like chased by the nothing from the never-ending story. It's like your blood is pumping a whole bunch of like weird chemical fog haze. Your thoughts become too heavy to lift in your mind. It's like
so is it like kind of a sedative, or like
I guess so, but I think it's also an antipsychotic, right? So it's doing something that's more than just a sedative. And the whole thing is like what they're terming as psychotic is anyone who's objecting to what they're doing.
whoa, that's really fucked up.
Well, and it's like a horror trope. This idea that like somebody gets committed to an asylum, but they're not crazy, right? And then it makes them crazy, but then that doesn't challenge the underlying assumption that, you know, that these drugs are somehow helping people, right? So then you imagine you go in there and even like no matter what your condition is, if what they're doing doesn't even help people or isn't even designed to help people, like that's so much worse, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
It's also really scary to think that if a psychiatrist comes in to reevaluate you and you're on those drugs, how the fuck are you supposed to make your case if you're not lucid?
Well, it's just like, why does the psychiatrist even have the authority for me to be making my case to him in the first place? Like, that's the major power imbalance that needs to be addressed. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that I
That
can't
too.
just be like, yeah, I get you got your perception of things, but yeah, man, that's like just your opinion, you know? Like, I should, like, that's not how it is, right? And we're at a point in our society right now where a psychiatrist almost has about as much power as a judge.
yeah, and like one thing too is the public perception of people with mental health diagnoses is like they imagine some like requiem for a dream shit, or they imagine like somebody like an old lady walking around in circles and looking a window. Like they just imagine like this complete like people who don't function at all, and
Yeah.
but at the same time, like you're supposed to understand that like nobody is 100% like perfectly like mentally impeccable, like that's kind of the nature of humans, is that like we all do kind of weird stuff or whatever. We all have our ups and downs, we all have all kinds of different crap going on, and
Well,
like
it's
yeah.
also like, I'm sure you've heard the phrase brain damage associated to people with PhDs, you know, like like when people get a few different PhDs, it's very hard for them to like, cuz they're in the world of their PhDs, you know? So I just think that it's just a weird arbitrary societal expectation
Do you
that's
mean
enforced.
PTSD?
No, I mean PhDs.
I'm confused by that.
Oh, it's just like I guess it's maybe something that business people say when they're talking to somebody with a PhD or whatever, but they joke around about how PhD and people that have them, they kind of speak in tangents, right? And so it's hard for the business guys to like follow what the hell they're saying half the time, right?
You mean like with the lingo?
Yeah, like
Mm.
the specific jargon to their course material or whatnot.
Oh, okay.
Stuff. Usually, it's very obvious that they could frame it in a sentence that would be understandable to a layman, but they refuse to.
Yeah, which I've never really liked. Lawyers do that a lot, which
Huh.
I can't fathom why. Wink,
My
It's
wink.
a
my
very
dad
arrogant thing to do.
my dad had a PhD, so I'm trying to like imagine that translating. But I mean, maybe I wouldn't because
No,
my
you'd
dad,
be too close to it.
yeah,
Or maybe your dad wasn't a dick. You know.
he was very good at just communicating in general. Like he was a generally likable person when he bothered to ever like talk to people, which like largely wasn't because he was kind of a fucking snob. It worked for
Like,
me. I liked it, but I guess it kind of rubbed off a little bit because I'm a fucking prick a lot of the time.
I think what
yeah,
it
but
is though is if you're in like a field and doing some kind of expertise, you do have like really really specific nuanced concepts, and then need to make really really stupid distinctions that generally 95% of the time are completely irrelevant and completely not useful, right? But then what happens is people who are very smart, often there's kind of a trade-off where there's a little bit of a social disconnect, and you need that social connection to understand what's going to be useful or relevant or interesting, right? So then what happens is you have these very, very high IQ, very smart, very experted people in a particular way, but then they're not they don't have as much ability to think, okay, who am I talking to? What do they need to know? And then which concepts can I just parse down into something simpler? And it's hard to do that just in general, especially if you're just like speaking to someone naturally. So I think it
Uh-huh.
all plays out very naturally. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well,
I
my,
guess
my
it's
dad was
part
a
of. Go on.
my dad was a computer science professor. So there wasn't a whole lot of him, I think, really doing this in general. Now that I think about it, because it was like he just did not talk about that shit. Like, as he was a microchip designer, so it's just kind of like, okay, what I really know about, I'm probably just never going to talk about it at all. So I have to learn to communicate in just other ways entirely, and it actually wasn't that big of a deal.
Oh, that makes sense.
I think that's part of Jordan Peterson's charm as an educated person, because he's got both the clinical hours and the teaching hours. That for his students, he's already accustomed to explaining things in a way that someone who's not already an expert will understand.
Well, and he's also a clinical psychologist, so communicating with laymen's is part of his actual career.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's actually kind of rare in academia. Like, people who actually have experience in the real world, even in a job that makes sense. Like, most of them just study and they stay in there as teachers, assistants, then they become professors themselves, and they try to have
like a pyramid.
the least.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. in some fields of study, that definitely is the case.
I'm gonna do gender African studies, or African gender studies would be the correct way to say that in English, you moron. Okay.
And what kind of job do you seek out with that? A professor of gender African studies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the measure of a good professor is someone who can, like, grab some weird thing from the clouds and then just, like, bring it down and show it to you in a way that's, like, immediately, like, empirically, like, makes sense, or has, like an emotional, like, attachment, something that's, and like, the more obscure and weird that, like, cloud ideal concept is, like the better the trick, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had this whole awesome G, sub awesome G concept that I tried working out a few years ago. I don't know if I could ever really explain it really too well, but it's like awesome G is like let's say that the universe is created, right? And then awesome G is like the force of creation. And the sub awesome G force is the nothingness reverberating around that creation. And that's like the dance of eternity, where you have like, that's where good and evil come from, essentially. And so the sub awesome G force always tries to cause disruptions and disconnect from the awesome G source, because it's just a funny little idea that I played with a little bit, but you know.
Well, yeah, sort of like if you have like an empty vape, and sub awesome G isn't even necessarily thinking about what it's doing either. It's just naturally kind of it's nature, right, to fill in wherever it can.
Yeah, exactly. Who's this?
This is the liberal hammer.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear. I saw you had popped in a little while back. So that I was hoping you'd make a properly reemerge.
Yeah, no, what happened is that I one second. I haven't used this system in so long. I haven't used this in so long that all my settings were off. I don't know why, but they were off. So I had to go through. I had to go over my screenshots that I saved.
No, that happened to me because like I had stopped streaming for a few weeks when I was getting ready to go visit America and see the ICMI, and then like I finally get my shit together to go and stream again, and I'm like, what the hell? This shit has to patch. Like, it's set to this thing instead of that, and like my stream key changed, and like what the fuck, like. But,
yeah, I couldn't hear, or I know no one could hear me, and I couldn't hear anyone. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's always something, always some little thing, but.
Hey, Hammer.
Hey, Prince, how's it going?
I'm all right.
Yeah,
I actually,
I had you on my channel on Christmas. That was the last time, so it's been almost a year.
Yeah, I haven't been very active on YouTube until recently. Over the past 2 weeks, I created 2 videos, but other than that, I hadn't been on YouTube in 9 months.
Yeah, I remember you
So-
sent me the one that you did about the there was the James Younger situation, right? I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
That
yes.
was-
I knew that something would probably eventually, pop up that would really, inspire me to create a video. And when I saw that case, and I was like, yeah, this is something that I'm passionate about. This is something that I definitely want to make a video about, because I just thought it was crazy what was being accepted as evidence. And I mean, I get that there was other testimony from therapists being invited into it. I understand that. However, anyone can get a therapist that will agree, say anything. But to me, what was really off-putting was the fact that what was being allowed was that this child preferred the girl's toy at McDonald's. This child's favorite movie was Frozen. And all I could think back to my childhood when my favorite Disney film was Pocahontas. I actually did prefer the girl's toy. And when they were talking about Starfire is his favorite superhero, I was like, I like Xena Warrior Princess. I was like, if I had this woman as my mother, if I had this woman as my mother, I could just imagine the life I'd be living now. I'm very happy being a man, and I just could not imagine if I had her as my mother where I'd be right now in my life. So and
a lot of gays feel that way, right? Because that's such a common experience. But at this point, so Thomas, I have to disclose to you, I didn't really explain anything about my channel because it's not really about anything in particular. But what it sort of evolved into is kind of like this conclave of semi-conservative or libertarian-minded gays, essentially. So right now, you're surrounded by degenerates. You're surrounded by degenerate homosexuals.
Well, I mean, confession time. I'm a yestergay. I used to date a dude, Scott, in Edmonton, and I got messed up when I was a kid, and it was just like how I made peace with it. He was a real gentle soul and whatnot. And so I feel like to each your own. Everybody has the right to love however they want to.
Yeah, cool. Because you're kind of making the rounds of different podcasts. So you checked the box of like this weird like non-mainstream. like gay cult. Check that box.
Nice.
Non-democrat leftist, or I mean, Liberal Hammer is kind of the most leftist, I think, out of all of us.
Yeah, and then Prince, I guess you identify as a centrist, which I hate. Which I hate.
No, I'm not a centrist. I'm a radical centrist. That's the best.
Centrist. Okay.
I know, and I hate the term as well. It's fucking stupid.
Thanks, Tim Pool.
The thing about it is that
I'm gonna send you a beanie in the mail.
Oh, God.
You should be half Asian.
No, he doesn't say that he's
half Asian now. Sorry.
Tim Pool doesn't say that he's a radical centrist. No, what that means to me is that I actually have a number of, I guess you could call them radical opinions, like just opinions that are dramatically different from both the left and the right. And so it's not fair to really call me a centrist because it's like, like there's not a whole lot of people that are MRAs, of either the left or the right. But I was going to say to Liberal Hammer real quick is that I don't know if you know who what's her name? I was going to call her Starfire. Starfire is, but she's from Teen Titans.
Yeah.
That kid could very, very well be straight because she's like the hottest comic character of like all of them.
Did you see the video? Did you? I know Blair White covered the video.
I haven't watched it. I'll definitely watch it now.
Yeah. Well, there's the video where the little boy at 3 years old. This is when the boy was 3. He's 7 now. His father was recording him, asking him about being a girl, and the father says, "Now, mind you could say the father is coaching him. Of course, that is what people would probably argue. But the point is, like when you're watching it, the boy's responses seem so genuine, and the father says, "Who says you're a girl?" He goes, "Mommy." And the boy actually goes to a point, he's like, "I like girls." And that's I like girls is not I want to be a girl. Just
There's a difference between there's a girl inside of me or I want to be inside of a girl.
Yeah.
Exactly. So he's like, I like girls. No, I love girls. Actually, I think he said I love. But regardless of which one he used, that's a far cry from I want to be a girl. And what I especially found interesting was that people were accepting what I mentioned earlier, the Starfire. That was actually brought up, that favorite superhero Starfire, like I said, Frozen, and wanting the girl's toy. What's interesting though is on the left, you have an entire community that talks about how bad gender stereotypes and all that shit is. Yet that being that is relying on gender stereotypes to use that to say that this child is a girl. So which is it? Either these stereotypes are, should be done away with, these gender stereotypes should be done away with, or you're going to use them to say, okay, this little boy is actually a little girl.
That's such a good point.
It's actually a pretty common MRA anti-feminist argument to point out that feminists are really, really into gender stereotypes in certain instances. Like feminist laws rely entirely around gender stereotypes. Like the Duluth model, for example, where supposedly men are the only ones that ever attack women in domestic situations, and that's totally a gender stereotype. And there's a number of ones about women too that are kind of similar, and I forget them right now. So
yeah, but that's why they got really pissed at Erin Pitsey, the woman who created the first women's shelter and tried to establish the men's shelter. Like, she realized that most domestic violence is perpetrated by women, and you can't have that in feminist circles. You can't have that. It's always the man the perpetrator, the woman is victim. It's clearly stated.
She made the mistake of she made the mistake of believing that humans were a little bit more equal than they actually were. She was trying to ask for equality, and how dare she? How very
she made the
absolutely
mistake
dare
of
she?
challenging these gendered stereotypes and has paid the price. And as we explained last week, it's definitely a lesbian conspiracy. But
actually, it's
so I just wanted to bring it back. I do like, because the James Younger conversation and the idea of trans kids and everything, it actually is kind of related, I guess, to this larger conversation of like weaponized mental health, like the state using mental health as a way to shut down dissidents. So I guess, do we have any final thoughts on that topic? Because I wanted to talk about Mormonism, because I've had some experience with Mormons in Hong Kong
magic
here,
underwear.
and I wanted to talk about Mormons because I'm kind of a fan, and this is something I haven't really talked about to people before, so I want to bring it out.
Okay.
Well, I did have one final thought with that, just one in regards to trans, because one of the arguments I get all the time when I say I do not support children transitioning, and I actually think it should be illegal for, I think hormone blockers should be illegal. Puberty blockers and hormone therapy, I think those should be illegal for minors. What a grown adult does with their body is fine. And I usually get a response, well, you don't have a problem. You don't have a problem. Well, if a teenager says they're gay, but if a kid says they think they might be trans, you have an issue. And I go, no. No, you're trying to conflate things there. No, that's wrong. Because I don't have a problem if a kid says they're trans. It's the action. For example, if a kid came to me and told me that they think they might be attracted to the same sex, that they might be gay or lesbian, I wouldn't tell them, well, what I would say to them is, okay, and that's something for you to think about more when you're an adult. Right now, just be a kid. What I wouldn't say to them is, well, you know what? You should go and act on that. Go fool around with someone of the same sex. Just like, so if a child came to me and said they thought they were trans, I would have that response of, okay, that's something to look into more when you're an adult if you still feel that way. I wouldn't say, okay, let's go get you treatment. That's the difference. There is the action.
Yeah, I think the treatment part is the...
Well, let's go get you, puberty blockers and all that. No.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
chemically castrate you at 12.
Exciting.
Exactly.
Well, and
Exciting.
actually, so Toto, who also you can introduce yourself,
Sorry.
dude.
So I'm a weeaboo faggot.
Yeah, that
Oh, I
that's,
can I?
sums it up. It feels rude if someone else says it, so that's why I need you to introduce yourself. But
You
but-
can say it on his channel.
yeah,
Just
on
not
my
mine,
channel we
if
can
you're
say
ever on
anything.
there.
I don't give a fuck. But
Okay.
but so well also we're all getting fucking nuked next month anyway, right? It's the impending
Yeah, that's
apocalypse. But no,
Yeah.
so you had mentioned to me that like I think it was you who had brought this up, but I think other people have also caught on to it that when you force a kid to transition and give them all the hormone drugs, like if it's male to female, it actually like fucks up your brain and it gives you a lower IQ and everything. And I think
Yeah,
this ties into
I
this
didn't know
idea
that.
like when you treat people with a lot of these drugs like Haldol and shit, like you're fucking up people's brains. And like maybe that's a very, very rational, very easy standard, right? How about if we're gonna treat and address mental health, let's not use the drugs that shrink brains.
And ironically
Stop.
enough,
Sorry, go ahead.
on.
Okay, but yeah,
Okay.
this
Well, no. Ironically enough,
Oh my
with,
God, you
with
guys
that,
are
I know,
all
right?
so
I know,
gay.
horrible. I know exactly. Ironically enough, with that, with the especially the puberty blockers, is that it results in not enough penis development to actually, if someone does identify as trans as an adult, to get the surgery. The full surgery. This is occurring as well, where because the puberty blockers, they're basically stuck with a micro penis, and therefore there's not enough to actually do the surgery.
Oh, they get a
Right.
micro vagina.
It's
Right,
also
it's not an
argument
actual
in
vagina.
activism.
Like
Well,
the
yeah.
thing is that it's probably best that they don't get it either way because it's basically just a fucking wound that they have to keep dilating. Otherwise, it'll be like
Yeah.
it's.
I was reading a pretty disgusting 4chan about a post-op, and oh man, it was talking about
Oh
how
yeah,
the-
they showed you the videos.
No,
of it,
no,
the
no,
kingdom?
no, I didn't get into videos. I
Oh.
made a commitment a long time ago. No videos on 4chan, but
That's for the best.
I have to take care of some of my mental health. But no, it was just one of those write-up things, and just talking about how the gooch was all just reeking like shit, like just like a shit box.
God, that's because it's fucking bacteria.
Yeah,
It's
and
a
then,
wound.
like, he was saying that like when he went into his apartment or whatever, that his whole apartment would smell like shit, and I was like, well, it's kind of
Not actually like shit though, like vagina wound.
diseased flesh.
I don't
It's
know.
actually an argument used in activism these days. Like, don't circumcise your son because if he wants to become a woman as an adult, they're gonna need that foreskin to.
I don't even use
Yeah,
a vagina.
that's my argument. That I thought of that. You have to give me credit for that. That's my brave new form of intactivism. Is say, okay, obviously nobody cares about the boys. They don't care if the kid dies. They don't care about what he's gonna think. Right? Fuck him. Fuck him for whining about it. He should have not been male and should have been a woman. He made that mistake, right? So instead, we're gonna say, well, hey, your son who you definitely don't love and definitely don't care about. What if he decides to be a woman? And he won't be able to now. Now you have to care about circumcision. Oh yeah, that's right. That's gonna be the activist angle. Besides just like shaming mothers on social media until Zuckerberg bans you.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be going on to the Mormons, right? I have fond memories of a
no, I
Mormon
wanted to
boy.
bring
Oh yeah,
up.
that's the thing.
I just wanted to say one more thing about the puberty blockers thing. Like, I don't remember the guy's name, doctor who looked into the whole puberty blocking thing. Like, he made the case that if you give kids puberty blockers so they have more time to think about it, they don't progress as their peers do, and they feel more like the other. So it's actually more likely for them to feel like, oh, transitioning might be the right thing because they don't go through puberty as the others do. So they're missing out on that, and it reinforces of course, they are then definitely not like the other kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally know what you mean. That makes sense.
The transhumanists just have to solve everything, and we just haven't given the transhumanists enough time. I think that's just what it all boils down to.
Oh, those transhumanists, they're fucking robots, guys.
I'm all
What
for
they
them. I'm 1000% pro transhumanists. But I'm also
I want infrared vision.
100%. Okay, so my thing is, I used to be Christian, right? And I was in the evangelical camp, right? And kind of bought into all of the, I guess people think it's like really lowbrow and really shitty and like kind of mean spirited. A lot of Protestants like hate Catholics. Personally, I think that the anti-Catholic arguments that Protestants make, they tend to make a lot of sense, and like especially in light of like this new pope and everything, I'm like, yeah, totally. So like I always thought like, yeah, the evangelicals, they read the Bible, they think God wrote a book, they actually read it, they take it literally, which is really not literally. It means that they read it and then take it as saying what it says, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of a simplistic approach in a way, but I think that, if you think God wrote a book, like, I think simple, there's a place for it, right? So I'd always
What would you call those literal-minded people that just read a text and they just see the words?
Well, here's
The
the thing.
fundamentalists.
So people say like Peter is a rock. Peter is the rock of the church. They'll say, oh well, if you're a biblical literalist, you think Peter is literally a rock, and it's like, no. Biblical literalism means that they took that to mean what it was intended to mean, right? So it's really just a smear, right? Like biblical literalists are people who read the book and take it seriously, and using scripture to interpret scripture means you don't have another authority, right? So you're looking at the Bible to clarify other things in the Bible that might not be so obvious, and I think that just makes a lot of sense internally. So then I meet the Muslim, or not the Muslim, sorry. The Mormon.
It's okay. It's okay.
So I'm
Being
here in
a
Hong
Mormon
Kong, right?
is
I don't have a lot
an
of white
Islamic
friends.
Space Jew.
Yeah, so I'm walking around and I see this white chick, and she's like, "Hey, do you have a minute?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not gonna fucking lie. Like, I'm off of work, walking around with like a fucking beer, right? I'm just like, well, fuck yeah, I got time. Like, I don't give a. I'm just gonna go home and fucking shitpost on Facebook and just like scream at people and get banned again, right? Like sure, like I'll talk to a white person instead because it's refreshing." Right? And it turns out she's a Mormon. Every time you're in Hong Kong and like a white person is nice to you, it turns out they're Mormon. And like we had this awesome conversation about religion and everything. And I told her like, yeah, I used to be Christian, now I'm atheist because, I got really interested in philosophy. And I think that the atheist arguments regarding, the nature of God and everything and deism like makes a lot of sense. She hadn't heard of deism. And like she hadn't really heard of like anything I was talking philosophically. She wasn't that interested in that, I could tell. But she was like, well, okay, do you want to hear about, like what Mormons think? And I was like, you know what? Sure. Like, it's been a while since I've really thought about it. And like, I don't honestly really remember. And like, a lot of what she explained, I was like, this is actually kind of cool. It actually kind of makes a lot of sense. And it actually kind of jives with me from like an evangelical perspective. Because there are certain questions that like Christians don't have good answers to usually, unless you're Mormon. Which has to do with like the way that the message and the word of God was spread. And basically they said that at some point it was actually kind of corrupted and not done in a proper way. And that's not to say that they're like evil or bad people. It's just that like as humans we get misled. And like a lot of times people say, okay, so if you're Christian, like what do you think about like indigenous populations and the Alaskans and everything who didn't have access to your Bible, right? Like what's your argument? Like did they just not have access to it? And then she has a way of saying, like, no, like, they had their own revelation in its own way, and that under Mormonism, they were finally able to find those things and discover it and to unify all of it together. And I thought, like, that's kind of cool how you have a way of, like, explaining all of this, and it kind of hangs together. And, like, every single Mormon I've met, because it happened to me twice. I met, like, this really nice girl, and then I met this boy on the bus. And we're like talking. It was kind of awkward because he was like talking like over like a couple like Chinese people between us, just like talking to me also, right? like in like a crowded space about like religion and Mormonism and philosophy and things, and just asking these questions. Which I hate the fact that that's not normal. I wish that people would just talk about shit, But anyway, that was like my experience.
Why is it that the Mormons are the ones that are always willing to talk about the shit? That's something to consider.
Yeah, tell us.
Oh, come on. The Jehovah's Witnesses love to talk too.
Yeah, but they don't listen as much. The The Jehovah's
Oh no, they
Witnesses,
do a lot of talking. Yeah.
yeah, they don't listen to any. Whereas I feel like generally with Mormons, you get a good back and forth.
There's some Finnish
That's
free
true.
churches that do that too. They don't do polygamy, so I'm not that interested. But I've had good conversation with Finnish women who try to get me into their church.
Nice.
I would have liked to get into her church, if you know what I mean.
I see.
See, I don't know. I always saw organized because I'm not an atheist, like Space Jim, but I consider myself spiritual, which I know a lot of people do anyways. I know that's kind of like it's kind of like saying general studies, when you're at college. But
Would you say you're a deist?
No, I see. I don't. So my main problem has always been with organized religion, and I get this a little bit more from my mother. I know I do. So my mother was raised Baptist, and which Baptists can be very strict and everything. And when she was younger, there was a falling out that her family had with the church, and her father came home one day and said, "Okay, we're never returning to church again." So my mother never returned to church again as far as her Baptist faith. However, I remember growing up, she still would, talk to God. She would still sing the hymns, religious hymns, if she heard them, and so on and so forth. And my mother kind of she really developed this view of, why do I need a building to connect to God? Why do I need someone up at a pulpit to speak for me to God? My connection, I can be out in the middle of a field, and if I'm speaking from my heart, God will hear me. So that was very, my mother, it's not that my mother lost her faith, it's just she lost touch with organized religion. And she always said she viewed it as like the high school cafeteria in a way. There were cliques, population, all this stuff. And one when I was younger on the weekends during summer. Now, of course, my parents never asked me how it went. They never asked me anything about what I was learning. So when I got older, I realized that they sent me to that to get me the fuck out of their hair. That was the only reason they did, and it was free. So, of course it was, because they wanted to make another Christian, the church did. And it was there that I realized that there were two really bad questions, dangerous questions, when it came to, well, for me, Christianity, because that was the interaction I was having, was, first of all, the second most dangerous question is to ask why. I realized that was the second most dangerous question, was to ask why. And the reason that's the second one is because I realized, that's the most dangerous question. So the first most dangerous thing to do is to not accept the answer because it's God's will. That was what I learned was even worse than asking why, because I'd ask why, and then they'd say, well, it's because God's will, when they couldn't answer something. I'd be like, but that's not answering my question. Yeah, why is it God's will? That would piss them off a lot when I was younger. And I realized that I was a very annoying child, I'm not going to lie. When people did things, I asked questions. I remember my mother, when I was very little, having the conversation with me. I asked her, why do boys get to go without shirts and girls don't? And my mother said, because girls have boobies. And mind you, we're sitting outside, and right across the porch from us, right across the street on his porch, is this very heavy-set neighbor of ours. And without missing a beat, I pointed and said, but he has boobies. So I mean, I don't know. My relationship with religion has always been very fractured. And there was another experience where I was young, where there was a woman who would take me to church every Sunday. My mother let her. She was actually my transportation to my school. I had transferred schools mid-year, and there was a program where if you were a student who had transferred mid-year, they would actually cover the cost for someone to transport you from where you were living to your old school district to finish out the school year.
Oh, wow.
They figured it was an easier transition, right? Then you start fresh the next school year and you go from there. So during that time, and this was when I was 6 years old, this woman, she asked my mother, can I take him to church on Sundays? And my mother said, okay. And I remember this one time when I was feeling very sick on my way back from school. And I was in the back of her van, and I was just, I thought I was going to throw up and stuff like that. And suddenly, now mind you, I'm like 6 years old, this woman starts saying, have you made peace with, the Lord Jesus Christ? God might come to claim you today. This woman started talking to me as, God might come and take me today, and that I might die. And I'm like 6 years old. Oh, I remember that to this day. I'm not going to lie. It left an impression on me. And in regards to the Mormon faith, I just find it very interesting because, as Prince knows, I actually once identified as a feminist at one point. Yeah, I did. So with them, I actually thought it was funny. I was like, well, why don't the women get to have multiple husbands? That pissed because I actually got to meet the polygamous Mormons, by the way, which was a whole different experience than meeting just the Mormons that come and knock on the door. I got to meet a group of polygamous Mormons, so that was a very interesting interaction.
That's pretty neat.
I find it kind of interesting that it's alien to you that you might die, because one of the most popular Christian lullabies basically tells the kid you might not wake up from your sleep. In German.
Which one is that?
It's tomorrow morning, God willing, you will wake again. Is the
Is that like the prayer you say?
No, it's just a lullaby you sing to your children to put them
but
to
it's
sleep.
in German. The Germans have just a much darker sense of Holocaust. So
I know.
Wait a minute, isn't it the same melody as Rain, Rain, Go Away? Isn't it da na 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 na? It's the same one that Freddy Krueger uses.
It's na 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 na. It's a very happy melody, but
maybe
the text is dark as fuck.
I love the German language, and I don't speak it, but the reason I love the German language is that they can make a love poem sound like a massacre. It's fucking great. I love it. It's
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really like German as well.
I was actually trying to watch that movie, Jojo Rabbit, that new movie that's come out about a little boy who's like a Hitler Youth. And, and he has Hitler as his imaginary friend. And I was starting to watch it, and I was like, this is kind of funny. But, I pirated it, so, the version I have has all these, like Pakistani ads about how I need a gamble. And I'm just, really annoyed. I'm like, why did I download this? I hate my life. Maybe I'll get through it later today.
You started gambling, didn't you?
No, I have not done the gambling. The only gamble was because I wasn't sure if I wanted to give it money, right? Because it might just be a bunch of bullshit. Because I feel like it's too good to be true because it looks so funny.
It's Taika Waititi or whatever this face, the dude who made What We Do in the Shadows and Thor Ragnarok. So it could be anything really.
Yeah, there we go.
So. Question to get back to the Mormon faith. So now, mind you, this is obviously very pro-gay slant and stuff like that. There's a trilogy out there called The Falls, and I will admit I found it very, very interesting. And what it is, it's about, now mind you, it starts off like you think a porno would actually, not like with sex, but it starts off with there's two young Mormon men who are on their they're out there trying to spread the word and all that, and they end up falling for each other. And it's 3 movies worth of their journey. The first is, they're closeted while they're out on their mission. They get discovered. And, that's kind of where the first one ends. And then the next one is, it's been a couple years, they reconnect. So it's an interesting film, but they do actually discuss the Mormon church and they discuss scripture. So I found it very interesting. Obviously, it has its bias. It was created to be pro-LGBT, pro-gay. I get that. But it was still a very interesting trilogy.
Honestly, from all the LGBT or whatever gay culture films that I've seen that have involved something to do with the Mormon Church, they've all been fairly accurate and respectful. Like Angels in America is one that comes to mind, where again there was another kind of Mormon thing going on, or even the Laramie Project. I feel like the way that the Laramie Project portrayed the people that were just the regular Mormon people was fair and accurate. And but
you ever see Latter Days?
I haven't seen Latter Days. No.
And they really do. I agree with that. Actually, all the LGBT cinema I've seen in regards to the Mormon faith, often it's very respectful to the Mormon faith. Interestingly enough, the Mormons aren't made out to be I have yet to see one where the Mormons are made out to be these villains, these monsters.
Well, I think part of that is the phrase that Mormons make the best gays, right? And so there's just naturally a bit of a.
What do you think?
Is that a phrase? I haven't heard that. I mean,
I have.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. Wait, I'm curious. Sorry, I was away stretching. What's the Laramie Project about exactly? Because I'm trying to remember. I feel like I've seen it, but maybe I just haven't.
So it's about this young man, gay man that was
Matthew
murdered.
Shepard.
Yeah.
It is about Matthew Shepard.
You mean the kid who was trying to get
I know.
drugs and then he got murdered because he was dealing with drug dealers and then never made it a gay thing for no fucking reason because like the gays don't have enough things to complain about, so they make up random bullshit.
I don't know.
So I just gotta drop that red pill anytime Matthew Shepard.
It is interesting though that the defense they did use the gay panic offense that was ultimately used. I think that's what then works against them is they did use the gay panic offense, and Matthew Shepard was this tiny little twig of a boy, and these guys there was no way. So I think that's what really blew it up was the fact that they used the gay panic.
So basically, since he wasn't a woman, they were trying to have him play the woman card by being a twink.
Yeah, but still, so if they're gonna play the gay panic, then they brought the homosexual component into it, and they really they opened that up with the gay panic defense. So I don't have sympathy for them, even if there was drugs involved. The moment they said, "Oh, well, we did it because we feared him being gay and that he was gonna, screw up, whatever," that was when they brought it and made it the issue. So I will say that. Because I've actually I followed that up very closely. I have followed that up.
He never properly defended himself by saying, "You mom gay."
Yeah, right.
Well,
But,
anyway, I will say though that I don't feel sorry for them because they're murderers.
Yeah.
Yeah, regardless of the context around it, they did murder someone who was clearly much physically. I mean, there is. I mean, come on. I mean, if you actually, have followed the case, have read, the description of what was done to Matthew Shepard, the abuse, and then being tied up to the fence post out in the middle of nowhere. I'm sorry. Regardless of if it was a drug deal gone bad. Yeah, still no. I don't have any sympathy for them. However, what's interesting to me with the Laramie Project is because we actually, at my college, we did a play on this. And we had Matthew's Angels. We actually dressed up. There was those who were dressed up as Matthew's Angels. And what also gained notoriety during this time was the Westboro Baptist Church, because they protested outside the court hearings. And they protested Matthew Shepard's funeral. That was what really put the Westboro Baptist Church in the spotlight, was that murder case. So that was also an interesting component of that.
That's kind of gross. But I will say Fred Phelps was right when he said that Canada was a Nazi faggy regime to the north.
Fred Phelps, he's always he's an interesting individual because I've read up on him. First of all, the story with his mother is just tragic as all fuck. Wow, that's just crazy. But I mean, in general though, I mean, wasn't he actually kind of removed from power near the end of it anyways, if I recall correctly? From his own church, he was excommunicated. Yeah, towards the end of his life, he was actually excommunicated from his own church, pretty much by his own daughter, by his own children.
Which just kind of suggests he probably molested them at some point. You know what I mean?
You're gonna Me Too him? You're gonna Me Too a dead man on my channel.
I'm sorry.
By proxy. You're gonna Me Too a dead man by proxy.
It's my job as the revolutionary
something.
Mormon prophet to speak to the dead, and so that's how it's just
I feel a Mormon would be like the ideal person to deliver this fucking this major red horse pill. But I think Falwell, he's the one who when he died, Christopher Hitchens said on TV, like he was like being interviewed, and Christopher Hitchens says, "Man, if they It was like if they cremated him, he'd be buried. Or no, if they gave him what was it? Oh, if they gave his body an enema, he'd be buried in a matchbox."
What? What?
So Falwell, after he died, Christopher Hitchens on TV is like, if you gave him an enema, he'd be buried in a matchbox. Then to say, because he's all just full of shit. It's nothing but shit.
Oh.
I mean, I get that it's funny. I get it's also like dick atheism, right? It's like atheists were like the worst fucking people because we're super mean to everyone all the time. But I think this actually ties back into the conversation about mental health, right? Because like atheists have never really enjoyed the rights that religious people have, right? Because so many religious people will say, hey, this is my religion, therefore I'm allowed to do this. And I'm sitting here like, how about like, fuck you, just let everyone have these rights instead of cucking to this like statist satanic fucking establishment, right? How about instead you just like let the atheists have these same rights too? Like if I want to say to a gay couple, I'm not gonna bake your wedding cake because I don't like your face, right? Like, why is that less legitimate than like
what kind of rights? Like, I don't want to make this Christian wedding cake. You gay?
Go get better faces.
Rights? Like atheists, they don't really ask for rights because they're just the reasonable ones. They just want to be left alone. So that they have maybe the right to be left alone.
More, assertive with that. I think I agree with Spacepan on that. Atheists really haven't ever had like a right to deny service for religious people. I think, or at least not in. I mean, probably in America, maybe, but not in like other countries.
Like I would love to start a restaurant, like create a bar and restaurant, right? And I say, only anarcho-capitalists are allowed. If you're a statist shill, like I'm going to discriminate against you because screw you, because you don't think I'm allowed to exist, and you think that we should have a terrorist monopoly that dictates the most basic and intimate parts about my life of like making contracts and owning property. So like, of course I'm going to exclude you, right?
But that you're discriminating against people coming in there and taking their money, you're neither being anarchistic or capitalist.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm being an authoritarian and like a total like anti-capitalist in that sense. But like that's the beauty of anarcho-capitalism is you can be your own private little tyrant, And if people don't like it, they can just fuck off. And I imagine
to me,
my little ANCAP bar would totally fail because people would just say, okay, this person's obviously a fucking crazy person. But since I'm not diagnosed, the government's not gonna cart me off,
So I will admit why I definitely have advocated for them in my past, especially as an activist. I do find it interesting though to see where these anti-discrimination laws, seeing how they will be approached as more and more situations come up that are counter to why they were originally passed. So for example, as you have more white people suing for racial discrimination, as you have more men if they sue for sexual discrimination, if you have atheists suing, so or this is also interesting, right? Because I'll talk to a number of Christians who will be like, yeah, religion should be in school and everything. And I'm like, oh, so, the Quran should be taught. And they'll be like, what? I'm like, if you're talking about religion though, because we are freedom of religion. It does not say the Christian religion. So where do you draw that line then? Because, okay, you want religion in school, then you're going to have your kids exposed also to faiths that are not your own. And this is where they will take a moment. I'll see it often during these discussions because it's something that never even entered their mind because they have been so focused in their own little bubble, their own little echo chamber that the only religion that could possibly exist to be put in schools then would be their own. So
Yeah.
it's interesting because I'm very much about separation of church and state. So when I have this discussion, it gets this pause, sometimes aggravation. If it's on social media, I've gotten blocked because they don't want to have that discussion. Because if you want your religion taught in schools, it's freedom of religion. That means then that other religions can have their religion as well taught in schools and even practiced, if that's what you really, the direction you want to go. So I'm just curious to see as we progress with these discrimination lawsuits, with these freedom of religion lawsuits. I'm just curious because I remember a while back, and mind you, when I talk even to this day to a lot of people in the gay community, in the LGBT community, it focused on Christian bakers, baking cakes for same-sex weddings, so on and so forth. Steve Crowder did do a video where he went into a Muslim bakery and asked them to bake a cake for his same-sex wedding, And they said no. Now, this is completely, a lot of people I brought it up to would dismiss it, saying, well, it was fake. He was just being obnoxious. I'm like, but the point is they did not know that. They did not know that he was not a gay man asking for a cake for his wedding. They did not know that.
Well,
yeah, and sorry. I just gotta say, and we can kind of safely, I'm gonna say, somewhat safely assume that whoever the fuck the faggots were that demanded to get their cake made at the Christian bakery, they're probably fucking annoying as shit.
I hope the Christians poisoned it. I'm sorry.
I will go as far as to say they purposely did it. Like they picked that Christian bakery. There probably were some neutral bakeries around,
So
I'm so happy right now.
Are you guys ready for a Mormon red pill?
Yes,
of course.
Actually. So we're about 2 hours in. So I want to be wrapping things up, and I'm happy to end it on this note. But before you drop the Mormon red pill fucking bomb on Nagasaki, I just want to say I'm so happy that you came on here, and I hope you forgive that obviously it's a little bit of an unprofessional, very casual stream. For its pros and cons, we got 5 viewers and 6 people on, which means at least one of you fuckers isn't even fucking on my fucking page to fucking like the video on my fucking baby ass channel.
It's me. I'll go do it.
Yeah, of course
I'm totally not
You're the
watching
worst
it.
one.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm totally not watching it.
But no, I just want to say no. But on a serious note, like I really do think that what you're speaking to is very important and very valuable. And I think that like you're a great example of someone who like you have these diagnoses of things that people normally just totally dismiss, yet here you are speaking, you're totally lucid, totally reasonable, and I agree with pretty much everything you're saying. Fuck the media for shitting on you and like trying to smear you and not engaging with what you're actually saying, because they're enabling this just horrific kind of abuse, and we do need to speak out and condemn evil. So I just want you to know, you have this faggot ANCAP atheist ally here in this little space for whatever it's worth.
I want to say that that's really beautiful, and that I appreciate all you faggots.
I was about to say me too. Except for I'm not an ANCAP. I'm this faggot radical centrist.
It's funny when you said that, Prince, because that's also how I self-identify, as a radical centrist.
Oh, you're one of them too? Get off! Get out!
Hey, I'm actually, I will admit, I'm still actually a registered Democrat, technically, so,
Oh, I know, you're the worst one. You're the worst one by
It's okay.
My God.
So I discovered this kind of interesting stuff about my church's history recently, and it's blown my mind. So when Joseph Smith died, right, the guy that started the whole thing, he was running for president of the United States of America, and he was running on a platform of the abolition of slavery and shared governance with the First Nations people. So it's like America was kind of contained east of the Mississippi at that time. And like, I'm just saying, like if this guy hadn't been killed, right? America could have voted about slavery instead of going to war over it. And it's like, how much different would time have been back then, And so that's just like one of those things that I think about, and I think about like what Joe says that he saw, and what the Book of Mormon claims it is, and stuff like that. And like The Catcher in the Rye is a great book, and you can read it and you get to know Holden Caulfield. And the Book of Mormon's kind of a cool book about weird societal things that go on and tie it in with Jesus in some weird way. And I don't think that there's anything in here that's necessarily discriminatory towards gays or lesbians or anything like that. I think that the church and the people that are in charge of it today, they might want to discriminate against gays and lesbians and try and make them feel like they're less than. But I don't think that's what God thinks. I think that God loves gays and lesbians, and that's why gay marriage is allowed, because the Bible teaches us that whatever laws are allowed, God is allowing. So if God is allowing homosexual marriage, that means that God doesn't have a problem with it, So that's just a little bit of food for thought. There's plenty of churches that like welcome gays and lesbians into them openly and lovingly, because the whole thing with like church and God and all these things is it just helps our communities be stronger and our societies be stronger, because it's a place where people can be fully vulnerable and naked without the social mask. And so I pray that you guys grow in your lives and in your hearts, and your lives will continue to improve, and we do beautiful things. All right.
Hey.
Yeah. That was wholesome as hell. Wholesome as hell, and who could disagree? And like, that's actually a great insight. I actually didn't know that about John Smith, because we've all seen the South Park episode, right? Dum 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 dum, right? And it's like, I mean, take a step back and think, yeah, he's the one saying, let's have this peaceful resolution to all these conflicts that have really shaped and defined America in such a profound way. That's a really important thing to remember and to speak about, and I'll have to look more into that because that's really interesting.
All right. Yeah. Well, listen, I'm gonna go to sleep in probably a little bit, try and improve my court case, and probably turn myself into jail tomorrow. So we'll see how everything goes. All right.
Yeah, this stream probably
good luck
won't
to
help,
you, man.
So I appreciate the sacrifice. But best luck to you and everything too.
Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, it was really nice talking to you. And
nice to meet you.
Very much good luck.
All right. Bye
Be
for now.
safe.
Bye.
Good luck.
We'll put out more.
We all just endorsed and enabled a horrible, schizophrenic, awful fucking terrorist, and have greenlit him to do whatever mayhem and mischief he will continue to do.
I thought it was just a guy with a cannabis plant in the background smoking 3 joints while talking to us, but that's just
I came in late, so I'm missing. Yeah, I came in late, so I'm missing a lot of context. So
Are we on the ADL list now, Spacepan?
I have been emailing those fuckers every day saying, "Hey, I'm critical of everything. Add me to your list," and they keep ignoring me because they know that hurts me the most.
No.
Every
Please,
fucking morning
put me
I
on your
wake
hate
up and I
list.
email the
No.
ADL and I send them one of those memes of like a rabbi like sucking an infant penis, and I'm like, hey,
You mean the thing that got me
stop
fucking
this?
disabled on Discord?
Huh?
Yeah,
Wait,
that's
what?
what got me my account on Discord fucking banned, and I had to make a new one.
Where did he post it?
I posted it to this guy who was saying that people shouldn't be fucking discriminated if they believe.
In a direct message?
So I showed him a picture of it, of what actually fucking happens. And
Because on the forefront, on Intactivist servers, we post that shit all of the time.
Yeah, but Yeah, but the difference is that I showed it to someone who doesn't want to see it because that's emotionally inconvenient. So they basically reported me, and I got fucking disabled.
And they agreed that reality is a cruel thing to show to someone. Then
Yeah,
I
and
didn't know
I'm sure
you
they
could get-
cried out in pain as they banned you. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, but like it's such bullshit because if it's emotionally inconvenient for you, be against it. Like, agree with me. That should not be like a tolerable thing to in our
what
society.
the fuck is their argument? Is do they say it's a fabricated fake image?
It was a circular fucking argument. It was the circular. They had no argument. It was so stupid.
I've never heard of anybody being banned from Discord.
Well, it's disabled.
That was my perspective
several
too.
people.
So
You guys were both talking at once, so I'm confused.
One at a time. Come again, Toto?
Yeah, basically, the why I got disabled was because gore is against the TOS, and I guess it counted as gore, and also like as like sexual explicit because he was literally fucking sucking on a kid's dick. So like, I guess that's
well, yeah. I mean, that sounds like kiddie porn, and that's always going to be a problem.
Yeah,
but like, it's Brit Mila. It's on so many family videos in the Jewish community.
Like, this shit's legal, so like, why the fuck are you defending it? That's why I showed it to him. So it's so stupid.
I was gonna say real quick. I don't know if you guys care aside from Space Pan. I just fucking found out that the show Girls, fucking Lena Dunham's claim to fame, that is made by the same producer, maybe director as Freaks and Geeks, which is like the best show ever.
That's ridiculous.
I haven't seen
That's the most ridiculous
I only
thing
know
I've ever
that
heard.
Lena Dunham
Makes
sexually.
me very sad. Sorry.
Yeah,
wasn't
no,
Lena
that's a
Dunham
lot.
the chick that admitted to sexually abusing her sister?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's Lena
I
Dunham.
mean,
Lena
it's
Dunham, whose father draws like vaginas in weird situations and then puts his artwork up all over the walls while he's raising his girls, and then by some magic that's totally unrelated, Lena Dunham ends up writing a fucking book about how she used to like do weird sexual shit with her little sister, who is of course a lesbian, and then who then goes about to defend it. But anyway, so I'm gonna go on that note. I thought I had ended the stream, but I'm gonna.
Oh no, it's still going.
I'll end the stream,
We're being
but I'll
so
keep
radical.
the Hangouts open.
How can we be so radical and yet so brave?
So here's so anybody who is listening, if you're in the chat or whatever, I post the Hangouts usually just like in my Discord. If you don't use Discord, I'm gonna go ahead and drop the Hangouts link in the live chat. So anybody in the live chat now, any fucking rando person on the internet's about to fucking enter, be warned. But
all 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah, whatever. I know, exactly. Literally less people listening than talking, which frankly that's my gold standard. If I don't achieve that at some point on a stream, then I've failed, right? But we're gonna go non-live. Does anybody want to throw anything out there to the live Immortal audience who may be viewing this later?
Is there anything that I would want to say?
It's really tempting, right?
I'm trying to think if I even have anything at all worthwhile, and I don't think I do.
Well, I know we're all facing that apocalypse, with our channels and everything like that. And I saw your video, Prince, and I have to admit it is kind of like wow with that. And I know there's been a lot of talk of transitioning over to different streaming channels, but I might myself. But one thing I'm going to be partaking in soon, I'm not going to go too much into details. I'm actually going to be taking part in a documentary.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And it's about locally local to where I grew up, a clerk denied a same-sex couple a marriage certificate. based on her sincerely held religious beliefs. And this became a huge issue where I am. It actually did get national coverage. Our state governor addressed it. And while I'm not going into detail, since I grew up in the area, I actually went to one of the town hall meetings. And that was where there was a woman who wanted to make a documentary on it. And me and a good friend from high school actually going to be doing our interview this Sunday. So I'm gonna be once that actually comes, depending if I still have a channel, and once that actually comes out there, I am gonna promote that a little bit on my channel. It would probably be like a goodbye thing. Hey, check this documentary out.
So I would recommend BitChute. I would recommend BitChute because you might be able to, I don't know if he's probably has a lot more users now, but you might be able to get it so that in the meantime, you can have it automatically upload from your channel whenever you upload, which is pretty sweet. I have that, but I got my channel on BitChute like years ago. And the other thing about it is that, it's the most free speech oriented one, and it's raising money so that it's better, because the problem with it is that, and this is a pretty big problem for the time being, is that the search engine is just bullshit. Like, it just does not work. But they're about just under 25% of the money that they're trying to raise, and they've been raising it for a while. So when they finally raise all of it, it's probably going to get a lot better. Just because it's apparently so much money that they're raising. And the thing about that is that when, a whole bunch of channels just kind of get nuked, which they're claiming is not going to happen, but like, I do not trust that, obviously. I think a lot of people are probably going to start donating to BitChute. So that's why I say BitChute.
Yeah. Actually, my husband watches a lot of gamers.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, my husband watches a lot of gamers who are switching over to BitChute as well. So he actually was telling me about that before I even mentioned it to him. So.
Oh, cool. And I have over 500 subscribers on BitChute, which I think is not really that bad because it's not that big of a platform.
Yeah, I stand with BitChute should be a hashtag. They're good people.
What I wanted to say is, I think that so. It looks like our friend who was on last week, Jay Willie. I don't know if I should call him Jay or Jay Willie or Willie. I don't remember. But he was really interested in surrogacy, and that was a topic that I was a bit prepared, but not 100% prepared to talk about today. And it looks like maybe this week isn't the week that we'll talk about that, but probably next week.
Hopefully so.
Because what I found is it's actually a fascinating topic. There's a lot of dimensions to it that are really, really interesting. So that's one thing that's at the top of my docket to talk about. But another thing I want to do for a stream is just going through my YouTube subscriptions and then finding them all on BitChute and subscribing to them on BitChute. Just like as a stream, and just like talking about each of my YouTube subscriptions, because like I don't think anyone's done that, but that's freaking long overdue. Like, people need to be doing that. We need to say, hey, there's going to be a big YouTube apocalypse. There's going to be another purge, potentially. And, anytime somebody is doubling their content on BitChute, you should be trying to support the BitChute things. And it can feel like a futile effort. It can feel like, what's the point or whatever. But, if there's content creators that you're really, really interested in and, like, want to, like, talk to or interact with, sending them a comment on BitChute is something that, like, they're more likely to notice because there's so much less, noise.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? It's a brave new world. It's like this whole fresh landscape. And I think that we should try to maybe generate a little bit of excitement for that. So that's another idea for a stream. So I guess my next couple weeks planned. Somebody in my Discord also mentioned like evil mothers, like single mothers, and like I thought, well, how about mothers of serial killers? So that's a whole nother body of topics to discuss, maybe for a potential one. So I guess the next like 2 to 3 weeks here, we got all kinds of interesting ideas to to go
That's
into.
beautiful.
I just want to say
on the
real,
BitTube thing. Yeah, go.
Yeah, it's just about BitChute. This is super quick. Is that I've made at least 5, probably a few more BitChute exclusives. I think that's kind of a good strategy, and I don't know how many other people do that, but you know, it's like just think about the making BitChute to go over.
Yeah, that's a good idea. It's just in my experience, 0% of the things that I've tried to upload directly to BitChute have successfully been uploaded, and every single video I have on my BitChute account is a video that was just automatically mirrored from YouTube. So I'll try that again. Hopefully I'll have better luck. I know that I'm kind of being a bitch right now, just complaining about that. But...
I could help you. There's certain things. I mean, largely you just have to do it more than once, and then, I mean, largely it's just.
So you know what I'm
trying more
talking
than
about.
once.
You've experienced this, yeah.
Oh yeah. It's a fucking pain in the ass. I hate it. It's like an actual issue.
But like, it's the kind of thing that
has.
if somebody warns you and you're anticipating it, then it doesn't bother you because you know about it. It's just like when you're expecting something to just upload, and then like you wait for the whole freaking bar to get to 100%, and then it's just like, I don't know what happened. Sorry, lol. Like then you're like, well, what the fuck? And it's like super annoying if you're not expecting it. But if you are expecting it, then it's like, okay, whatever. I can just deal with it.
Yeah, it's a platform issue. So yeah, expect it. And you know, if you really, and I think it's definitely worth uploading. Certainly for some people, you know what I mean. Like, I mean, you should. Everyone should. But you know, it's like, if you have more like a pretty sizable amount of subscribers and you have a hope, because you know, as I've been doing this BitChute for a while and I still only have 500 subscribers, you know, so a lot of people might just want to wait until channels get nuked, like I would say.
Right.
But
like,
and announce the fact that you're on BitChute over and over and over.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, the other thing too is like so if you open the BitChute mobile app, it's fucking garbage. Like the way they have it set up, it is so hard and unintuitive to just search for basic things. So it's really important if you have a BitChute account, like get your subscriptions on there. Otherwise, you're just gonna get, you know, whatever random crap their algorithm feeds you. If you want to really control what's gonna show up on your BitChute, like do what I'm gonna do on a stream. Maybe the next one, if not the one after, I'm just gonna line up all my like 600, 700, whatever the fuck YouTube subscriptions I have, this like insane number of subscriptions, and I'm gonna go through and find every single person, and I'm gonna shame the ones who don't have BitChutes. I'll unsub live, do a big shaming
the
ritual.
shit out of them.
Well, do what you should do? You should make a whole video about all of the people that you wish were on BitChute.
Oh, that's a much more constructive and positive way to go about that same thing instead of being an absolute retard like my plan was.
If you really, I don't know if you have a singing voice, but you could do the Animaniacs country song with the channels that really need to go to BitChute, you know.
Oh, that would be nice. I bought an automaton recently because the kids like it, and like they think it's really, really funny, and I think it's really, really funny. So we just play with it all the time.
What the hell is that?
It's this like shitty Japanese silicone musical instrument that it has a slider, almost like a trombone, and then the bottom part of it, it's shaped like a music note, right? So the whole length of the music note like makes different tones, and then the face of it, the bottom of it, like has a little face, and you can squish its face to make it like change the noise of the sound.
What do you call that stage that the frog is? The amphibians are before they become a frog. That's the word. Tadpole.
Yeah, it's like a
Otama
tadpole.
means tadpole.
Yeah, and they're adorable. It's super cute and they're super funny. And if you're really skilled, you can play music on it. It's just it's a little bit tricky. It's not a
It's
very
like the
high quality
violin.
instrument,
Like you
but it's
have
very
to
fun.
hit the notes just right.
Here, let me just grab one. Let's see, automaton. I'm gonna grab like
Hey.
there was one of like a Billie Eilish song that was really funny. Like I guess I'm gonna
Did we
be
stop-
like I might get a copyright strike for this, but I
Oh,
I
we're
guess
still on?
I don't say I don't care. I just like
Wait,
so-
you're gonna grab your telephone just now?
I just don't have it, but like so
Oh.
I mean just so there's this thing.
Like those are freaking beautiful creations
Do you
of.
see it
of
on the screen? Oh yeah, you have to be actually watching.
yeah,
It's not.
Wait,
it's
what?
not making any noise for some reason. Is this mute? Oh, why is this muted?
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not watching the stream, so.
you. How dare you? How dare you?
But their automaton is dressed up as Billie Eilish because it's a music video, and they get the nosebleed thing.
I don't quite understand it. Like,
Do you see how like so you see the slider at the top? That's how you make the tone of it. This is
It's
a
basically
silly
a
video,
just,
so they don't.
fretless string instrument. You have to put your finger on the exact same specific spot for the note.
I also kind of unironically like some Billie Eilish music.
I don't know Billie Eilish.
That's because
I
you're
respect
not,
you
you're not
enough
hip
to
with the
accept that
15-year-old
information.
girls.
My husband's guys. I gotta head out. My husband is on his way home. I will. It's been great. I'm glad you've had a chance to say hey to everyone. I wish I was able to drop in earlier. I was missing a little bit of context there. I actually looked more up into our guests. So, anyways, it's been great talking to you all. Hope to do this
Bye,
again.
Hammer.
Yeah, it's been good
Have a
seeing you on
great
here. I
time,
usually
man.
have my streams around this time each week. So that,
Okay,
that's
on the
when
same
they're
day.
happening.
Okay. Yeah, just send the message out on Discord, and yeah, hopefully I'll be able to drop in. Anyway, see y'all later.
Have a good
Hey,
one.
that was fun.
Bye.
Have a good time.
All right. Oh, I forgot. Like 20 minutes ago, I said I was gonna end the stream. So
Yeah.
we're ending it
Yeah,
now.
I was gonna
and,
ask
and
you.
we voiced our ideas about future streams and about promoting BitChute a little bit in preparation for this apocalypse, which honestly might not even happen. But better.
Yeah, that's
safe than
what
sorry.
Styx said. Styx said that that BitChute or not BitChute, that YouTube claimed that it's not going to affect people who are already on YouTube, and that it's something else that I don't actually remember. It was very vague and sounded like it's probably not necessarily actually even true anyway.
Yeah, but maybe that's just what they want us to think. Could just be gay ops, right?
Yeah, I think from what I've heard about what's going to happen, it's probably more likely to hit your channel than a bigger channel. Sadly, so.
Oh, that's too bad. Maybe. I feel like my channel, it's so just irrelevant that I've just been under the radar long enough. Because the moment they have a problem with me, the moment like any YouTube person is like looking through my shit, they can cherry pick and they can find the shit they need to ban me. It's not hard.
Yeah, well, and it'll hit my channel too, because my channel is definitely considered a small channel. Like, I think they mean like, under 25,000 is what is a small channel. You know what I mean?
That's fair. Although the thing is, though, is like what you actually say. I think you're careful enough that they're not going to be able to like clip anything you say and say, "Oh my god, this is awful." Instead, what they'll do is some bullshit where they're like, "Oh, you had Spacepan appear on your videos."
Maybe no. I
It'll
think
be
it's actually
like,
just
if they care enough about me to ban me, then like that would be probably the easiest justification for banning you.
I think that they'd be more likely to ban me. And it's because of my politics and it's because of a presence. Like, remember, I've been fucking blacklisted for years. Like, it was so blatant the way my channel growth. I've had 8 fucking hate speech strikes now. My amount of views, like all of the things that have happened so far regularly happen to me, and they've been happening for a very long time. Usually,
wait, so you got hate speech strikes?
I get them all the fucking time.
Okay,
I've had 8.
That confirms absolutely no one is fucking watching what I'm doing, because they would have been like, oh, hate speech there, hate speech there. I'm gonna make a video about how I think hate speech is a good thing. Like, I'm sure that's, but because it is. I don't fucking care.
They started my shit during, like, well, it was soon after the election, and but it was very soon. It was probably it was definitely before the first quarter of 2017 was over, and it I just think that it was really just my politics and the fact that I what I really think it is, and I've come to this conclusion for multiple reasons that I honestly don't really remember at this moment, but like more specific than what I'm about to say. I think that what it is that they consider me somebody that centrists, like people who are possibly going to change their political beliefs, I would appeal to such people. And I think that, and I'm not saying that you aren't like that at all, but I have this feeling that is what bothers them about me. All of the gay guys that, like make a fairly big deal about being gay, but are, centrist or right wing or whatever, they get hit hard. Like Mike Harlow, who was on Gaytriarchy one time, he gets hit really, really hard, and he does not have that many subscribers. Like, he has significantly less than I do, but he does have a significant amount of subscribers. But he used to be. He's one of the big walk away guys.
Yeah.
Wait, but a quick interject, if I might. Do we still want to be live right now?
Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and make it not live. Everybody, if you want to continue the conversation, Hangouts link is in the live chat, and thanks for stopping by, and keep on keeping on, and have a very nice day.